now that we've completed our plaster cast of drapery, we're ready to advance to the next stage of the class, which is still life. Like we mentioned with, way back a couple weeks ago, the introduction of this class, the still life is in class is primarily focused on you guys figuring it out while you're here. This is sort of your experimental place. I want you to be selecting objects, or I want you to have brought objects, hopefully you have them today, that are similar to the objects you're going to be using at home for the still life that you do without any help. Because you may run into some issues at home on your still life, and of course you're not allowed to directly ask for any help on the still life, but you can ask as many questions as you want in class. That's why we're here. So, it might be to your advantage if you're going to be trying to handle a complex, wine glass or something like that at home. If you feel like you might at some point run into a stumbling block, if you're working on one here, then you can utilize all the information you've gained here and help yourself out at home. Totally optional though. It's whatever you decide to do. Now, the in-class assignment here is that you should have brought 3 objects. We won't have much time other than the 3 objects to devote to this. So it's, this is just a 6-week drawing, and today almost exclusively we're working on design and composition for it. So I want to see, 5 to 10 compositional sketches like we did last week with the, last term in the composition course. If you are forgetting how to do those, it is listed in the Academy textbook under the instructions on how to do the compositional sketches. So you will be able to look back at that if you need a refresher for it. But, just use your markers. We're looking for just a little design here. Should be relatively simple. You'll have a few dark marks indicating your broad gestures or lines, line flows. So, if there were any fabric, you'd have a line flow for the fabric, or the rough shape of an object that describes its gestural quality. And then any indication of detail. If you have something that's very ornate, you might want to put a few speckles of dark on there to indicate that that is a focal point. And then we'll go back over that with the gray marker and establish a value pattern. And so ideally, in these 5 to 10 compositional sketches you do here today, you will have had several arrangements of your objects, and then not only several arrangements of the objects, but I'm hoping you'll alter the light in some way. And then we'll see how the light pattern is making shapes on your still life. We have to just not think of them as 3 individual objects, but sometimes dark shapes will flow from one shape into another, and so they might get reduced and condensed and simplified in the compositional design for it. We're not just looking for random compositional sketches though. I want you to be thinking about the compositional stems. We reviewed Edgar Payne. Hopefully you picked up Edgar Payne's book, Composition in Outdoor Painting, because it has all those compositional stems that we talked about last term in the composition lecture course. So everything from diagonal, radiating line, circle or U, steelyard, or weight counterweight. Lots of different design potentials that we can go through. So I want you to be pushing around your 3 objects to start to push the limits of how many different compositional stems you can come up with. Once we have reviewed those, and you've picked out the one that you think has the most impact, most strong design that jumps right out of the page, then we'll go ahead and move to harmonic proportions. So with harmonic proportions, again, remember we're going to take a rectangle that we've predetermined. It can be any size. Since this is a drawing, it's relatively easy to make any size rectangle you want. And then we're going to sketch out some of our harmonic proportions on it. So I remember, just a reviewer, we're going to go start with whatever rectangle you want. If we're doing a horizontal still life, it's going to be a page something like that. And then on that page, with willow perhaps, or maybe we lay a sheet of tracing paper over it that's the same size, we're going to create our harmonic line. So we go from corner to corner, There we go. And that gives us a nice placement of halfway. So it's halfway over, halfway up, halfway over, halfway down. Then from the corner to corner, we're going to do the corner to midpoints. So we have one there, corner to midpoint, corner to midpoint. We go corner to midpoint, corner to midpoint. Corner to midpoint, corner to midpoint, and then last one, corner to midpoint, corner to midpoint. And then of course along the main diagonal, that's giving us this little guy here, which is our thirds. So that shows us 1/3 over, 1/3 down, or in this case 1/3 over, 1/3 up. And then our last set of diagonals that we're going to draw are going to be midpoint to midpoint. So yeah, this guy, sort of make that diamond shape. And this gives us our quarter divisions. Remember, it's always along the main diagonal. So this will tell us how we can divide our canvas at the quarters, thirds, halves. You know, it's sort of like a musical scale. As well as over. If we want vertical quarters, thirds, halves, quarter, thirds. Thirds, quarters. Once we have our harmonic proportions, that tells us our placement. So we can lay, our horizon line along the quarter, horizon line along the third, or we can arrange our objects to fall along these divisions, or perhaps put a key thing of interest at one of these points. So I'm going to want to see your harmonic plan, your armature. You can either, again, do it in Willow on a set rectangle or do it on a tracing paper. And then we'll apply whatever you developed in your compositional sketch on top of our harmonic proportion. So you may nudge a shape over here a little bit or over there a little bit, maybe zoom out a hair or zoom in a hair, just to help things fall along these really nice placements. Hopefully we'll get them to feel a little more like classical drawings by doing this. So that's basically our plan for today. You're mapping out all of your design harmonic placements, and if you get that far, we'll go ahead and start to box and scheme everything up. We'll work it the same way we've done every other drawing. Each object we're going to box, anchor, scheme, envelope. Keep in mind, this is still life, so you do have a little bit more leeway as far as how strict you have to be with getting each of these shapes exactly right. Remember, organic objects like fruits or flowers do not have to be 100% exactly like what you see up there. They just have to exhibit the characteristic details or characteristic information that the object exhibits. And then when we're working with geometric objects like man-made things, wine glasses, pots, bowls, things like that, we just have to go through and make sure our perspectives are correct. So just like with the drapery assignment, it wasn't 100% necessary that each angle or each shape of the drapery assignment was perfect. We had a little bit of leeway because it was just drapery. We'll have a similar amount of leeway to still life objects. Now keep in mind, the one we do in class, remember, we don't have to do fabric with because we just spent 3 weeks working on fabric. But the one you do at home for your final project, the required final project for term 2, it's a still life. It needs to have 5 objects, and among them, a drapery is one, an organic object is another, inorganic object is a third, and then you have 2 more, either organic or inorganic objects. It is up to you. So we'll want to see that for our final assignment. Here's an example of what a student was able to do for their final assignment. A nice still life. If we count the fabric, the gun, the pocket watch, the pen here, the feather pen here, and then the piece of paper, technically that's 6 objects, but since there's nothing written on the paper, it's good that she didn't count that as an object. But this exhibits the high level of finish and rendering that we want to see in a final project. And of course, when we are working on our still life here in class, it's highly unlikely in the amount of time we have here We're talking maybe 15 to 18 hours that we have in class here. It's highly unlikely you're going to get a finished still life of this high quality in class. But this is what we're aiming for. Each level or each object that you render should have this level of finish. We need to see this quality in the work you're doing at home. And so when you're in class here, I want you to get everything sort of mapped out, shadow mapped out, and then focus on one object. Let one object be your goal. Again, you can use white paper for this assignment, or you can work on toned paper. I would encourage you to start working more and more on toned paper. It'll simplify things and gear you up for painting. But if you want, you can handle all of this shadow mapping here with white paper, white sketch paper, and then we can just transfer it onto toned paper later. That way you'll have also a better idea of exactly what tone for paper you want to use. So that's the assignment. So go ahead and everybody get set up and we'll start working on some compositional sketches.